Some moments don't just embarrass you, they expose you. At Davidson and Partners' year-end party, Ethan Blake stood frozen under a spotlight he never asked for, facing a question that should have been simple. Are you married? The room held its breath, not because of what he'd say, but because everyone suddenly realized they knew nothing about the quiet single father who'd worked among them for 3 years. His answer, "No, I'm still waiting," cracked open something none of them were prepared for. What was meant to humiliate him ended up revealing how invisible grief can make a person even in a crowded room. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if it moves you, hit that like button. Now, let me tell you how one careless dare changed everything. The Davidson and Partners holiday party had crossed the line from festive to chaotic, somewhere around the third round of champagne. What started as an elegant affair in the firm's glass-walled conference room, complete with catered hors d'oeuvres and a jazz quartet, had devolved into the kind of messy celebration that HR would pretend not to remember come Monday morning. Ethan Blake stood near the windows, watching the city lights blur against the December rain. He held a glass of sparkling water someone had mistaken for champagne, which suited him fine. Blending in had become his specialty over the past 3 years. Show up, smile politely, leave early. The formula had worked every time. He checked his watch, 8:47 p.m. Another 13 minutes, and he could reasonably excuse himself without seeming antisocial. His daughter Mia's babysitter had agreed to stay until 10, but Ethan never pushed his luck. Every minute away from Mia felt borrowed, and he'd learned the hard way that borrowed time always came due. "Ethan!" He turned to find Marcus Chen from accounting, already loose-tied and flushed, waving him over to where a cluster of colleagues had formed a circle near the dessert table. Ethan's stomach tightened. Nothing good ever came from circles at office parties. "Come on, man," Marcus insisted, gesturing broadly enough to slosh champagne onto his sleeve. "We're playing truth or dare. You have to join." "I'm good here," Ethan said, raising his glass slightly, as if it tethered him to the spot by the windows. "Don't be boring." This came from Stephanie Liu, one of the senior associates, who'd kicked off her heels an hour ago and now stood barefoot on the office carpet. "We need more players. It's mandatory fun, Blake. Mandatory." Several others laughed and added their voices to the chorus. Ethan felt the familiar pressure building, the social expectation that sitting out marked you as unfriendly, that keeping your distance meant you thought you were better than everyone else. Neither was true. He just had nothing left to perform with. "Just one round," Marcus promised, though his grin suggested otherwise. "Then you can go back to brooding mysteriously by the window." More laughter. Ethan weighed his options. Refuse and cement his reputation as the office recluse, or participate briefly and buy himself the goodwill to slip out unnoticed in 10 minutes. The calculation took 3 seconds. "1 round," he agreed, and let himself be pulled into the circle. 12 people made up the group, most from the litigation and contracts departments. Ethan recognized faces he'd seen in meetings, names he could mostly remember, but not one person he'd call a friend. That had been by design. Friendship required vulnerability, and vulnerability required trust, and trust required opening doors he'd locked 3 years ago when his wife Sarah died. The game had already been going for a while, judging by the increasingly ridiculous dares that had been completed. Someone had prank-called the CEO's voicemail singing Baby Shark. Someone else had eaten a cracker covered in hot sauce while reciting the company mission statement. The truths had been equally harmless. Embarrassing college stories, celebrity crushes, worst first dates. Ethan relaxed slightly. This wasn't so bad. Silly, but harmless. He could endure one turn and exit gracefully. Then Lena Hart walked into the circle. Lena was everything Ethan wasn't at Davidson and Partners. Where he was invisible, she was vibrant. Where he kept silent, she filled rooms with laughter. A senior contracts manager with an infectious energy, Lena had a gift for making people feel seen. She remembered birthdays, organized happy hours, and somehow knew everyone's coffee order. If Davidson and Partners had a social heartbeat, it was Lena Hart. She squeezed into the circle between Stephanie and James from marketing, her dark hair pulled into a high ponytail, her dress a bold red that matched her lipstick. Even slightly tipsy, she radiated the kind of confidence Ethan had forgotten how to access. What did I miss? Lena asked, her voice carrying over the ambient noise of the party. Ethan just joined, Marcus announced with the enthusiasm of someone who'd discovered fire. Fresh blood. Lena's gaze swept the circle and landed on Ethan. For a moment, something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, that the ghost of the third floor had materialized at a social function. Their eyes met briefly before Ethan looked away, focusing on the random pattern in the carpet. Perfect timing, Stephanie said. She spun an empty champagne bottle in the center of the circle. Lena, you're up. The bottle twirled, light glinting off the glass, before slowing and finally stopping. Its neck pointed directly at Ethan. The universe, Ethan thought, has a cruel sense of humor. Ooh, several voices chorused. Someone wolf whistled. Ethan felt heat creep up his neck. Lena leaned back on her palms, studying him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Truth or dare, Ethan Blake? He should have said truth. A truth could be deflected, managed, kept surface level, but something in Lena's tone, playful but not mocking, made him reckless. Dare, he said. Lena's eyebrows rose. Around the circle, people leaned forward, sensing entertainment. Stephanie whispered something to the person next to her, and they both giggled. Okay, Lena said slowly, as if reconsidering her options now that she had them. I dare you to— Wait, Stephanie interrupted, her voice sharp with alcohol-fueled mischief. I have a better idea. Ethan's instincts screamed warning. He should have left when he had the chance. He should have stayed by the windows. He should have— Lena should ask Ethan if he's married, Stephanie continued, grinning wickedly. Because nobody actually knows. Like, he's worked here for 3 years and we know literally nothing about him. Does he have a wife, kids, a secret family, an FBI witness protection situation? The circle erupted in laughter and agreement. What had been a harmless game suddenly shifted into something else. A collective realization that Ethan Blake was a mystery they wanted solved, whether he wanted to be or not. That's not a dare, that's a question, Marcus pointed out, but he was already being shouted down. Make it a dare, someone called. Dare him to answer honestly. Ethan's throat constricted. The walls of the conference room seemed to press inward. All 12 faces turned toward him, expectant, amused, curious. Not cruel. Most of them didn't mean harm. They just didn't understand that some silences exist for a reason. Lena hadn't moved. She was still watching him, but the playfulness had drained from her expression. She looked uncertain now, caught between the group's momentum and something else, an instinct maybe that this had gone too far. Guys, she started, but Stephanie cut her off. Come on, it's just a question. Ethan, are you married, yes or no? The room fell silent. Even the jazz quartet seemed to quiet, though that was probably Ethan's imagination. 12 pairs of eyes, one question. And suddenly, Ethan was back in the hospital 3 years ago, holding Sarah's hand as the machines around her bed fell silent one by one. He was in the funeral home, choosing a casket while Mia cried in his mother's arms. He was in the empty house afterward, surrounded by casseroles from neighbors who didn't know what else to offer. He could lie. He could say yes and let them assume whatever they wanted. He could say it's complicated and deflect with humor. He could refuse to answer and walk out. Instead, he heard himself say, no. The word landed like a stone in still water. Ripples of confusion spread through the circle. No? Marcus repeated. So you're single? Ethan's jaw tightened. The question was simple, but the answer wasn't. Was he single? Technically, yes. Sarah was gone, but single implied available, implied ready to move on, implied that the past could be boxed up and shelved. I'm still waiting, Ethan said quietly. The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't the anticipatory hush before a punchline. It was the stunned quiet of people who'd been laughing at a joke and suddenly realized it wasn't funny, that they'd stumbled into something real and raw and entirely too intimate for a holiday party game. Stephanie's smile faltered. Marcus looked down at his champagne. Someone coughed uncomfortably. Lena's face had gone pale. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Ethan, Excuse me, Ethan said, standing abruptly. The circle broke apart as he stepped through it, not running but moving with clear purpose toward the exit. Behind him, he heard whispers starting, the buzz of confusion and speculation. He didn't care. He'd already given them more than he'd intended. He grabbed his coat from the rack near the door and pushed through into the hallway. The elevator was mercifully empty. As the doors slid closed, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the polished steel, pale, tight-jawed, eyes dark with something that might have been anger, or might have been grief, or might have been both. The elevator descended. Ethan leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. "I'm still waiting." He hadn't planned to say that, hadn't even consciously thought it until the words left his mouth. But they were true. He was waiting. Not for someone new, not for love, not for anything as simple as moving on. He was waiting to feel like himself again. Waiting for the mornings when he didn't wake up reaching for someone who wasn't there. Waiting for the day when single father didn't feel like an identity built on loss. His phone buzzed. The babysitter. "Everything okay here? Mia's asleep. Take your time." Ethan texted back, "On my way. Be there in 20. The elevator opened onto the parking garage. His footsteps echoed against concrete as he walked to his car, a sensible sedan with a booster seat in the back and a collection of Mia's artwork taped to the dashboard. This was his life now. Simple, quiet, manageable. As he drove home through the rain-slicked streets, Ethan replayed the moment in his mind. The circle, the question, his answer, Lena's stricken expression. He shouldn't have gone to the party. He should have trusted his instincts and stayed home. But some part of him, the part that remembered what it felt like to be normal, to belong, to exist in social spaces without the constant weight of tragedy, had wanted to try. That part was an idiot. Meanwhile, back at this party, the circle had dissolved. People drifted away in pairs and small groups. The energy deflated, the game abandoned. Lena stood near the dessert table, staring at the door Ethan had disappeared through. "That was weird," Stephanie said, coming up beside her with a fresh glass of champagne. "I mean, what does still waiting even mean? Waiting for what?" Lena didn't answer. She was thinking about Ethan's face in that moment, the way his expression had shuddered, not with anger but with something quieter and infinitely more painful. Recognition, the look of someone who'd been asked to explain a wound they were still learning to live with. "I shouldn't have asked," Lena said quietly. "Oh, come on, it was just a game. How are you supposed to know he'd be so weird about it?" But that was the problem, wasn't it? They didn't know. None of them knew anything about Ethan Blake except that he showed up, did excellent work, and left. They'd turned his privacy into a mystery, his boundaries into a challenge, and Lena, who prided herself on reading people, on making them feel comfortable, had been the one to ask the question that cracked him open. "I need to apologize," Lena said. Stephanie laughed. "For what? You didn't do anything wrong. He's the one who got all dramatic about a simple question." Lena turned to look at her coworker. Stephanie was a good person, funny, smart, generous with her time, but she'd never lost anything that couldn't be replaced. She'd never understood that some questions aren't simple, that some answers cost more than others. "I'll see you Monday," Lena said, and headed for her coat. The December air hit her like a slap when she stepped outside. She stood under the building's awning, watching cars pass on the wet street, their headlights painting yellow streaks through the rain. She'd worked at Davidson and Partners for 5 years. In that time, she'd made it her mission to know people, not just their names and job titles, but their stories. She knew that Marcus was saving for his daughter's college fund. She knew that Stephanie was recovering from a brutal divorce. She knew that James in marketing was secretly writing a novel. But Ethan Blake? She knew nothing. And she'd never bothered to ask, had never pushed past his polite deflections, had accepted his distance as personality rather than protection. "I'm still waiting." Lena pulled out her phone and opened the company directory. Ethan Blake's entry was minimal. Office extension, email, department. No photo, no biography. Just the bare facts. She should let it go. She should accept that she'd made a mistake, that Monday would be awkward, and that Ethan Blake clearly wanted to be left alone. But Lena had never been good at letting things go, especially when she'd hurt someone. And the look on Ethan's face, that moment of raw, unguarded pain, was burned into her memory. She would apologize, properly. Not at the office where walls had ears and every interaction became fodder for the rumor mill, but somewhere private, somewhere he could hear her without an audience. The question was, would he let her? Ethan paid the babysitter and checked on Mia, who was indeed asleep, curled around her favorite stuffed elephant. He stood in the doorway of her room, watching the rise and fall of her breathing. 7 years old, first grade, soccer on Saturdays and piano lessons on Thursdays. She had Sarah's smile and Ethan's stubborn streak and a resilience that broke his heart daily. She didn't remember much about her mother anymore. Sarah had been sick for so long that Mia's memories were mostly of hospitals and whispered conversations and the careful way adults talked around children when they're trying to hide something terrible. Ethan was both grateful and devastated by this. Grateful that Mia wouldn't carry the sharp edge of grief the way he did. Devastated that Sarah, vibrant, brilliant Sarah, would fade to photographs and stories Ethan told at bedtime. He left Mia's door cracked and went to his own room. The house was a modest 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, nothing fancy, but safe and close to good schools. He and Sarah had bought it right after Mia was born, full of plans for the future. A bigger backyard, a deck, maybe another kid eventually. Those plans lived in boxes now, filed away with Sarah's clothes and jewelry and the thousands of small things that had once defined a shared life. Ethan changed into sweatpants and a t-shirt, then sat on the edge of his bed with his phone. 3 missed calls from his mother, probably checking in. A text from his brother. How was the party? Ethan typed back, fine, home now. The lie came easily. His family worried enough without knowing he'd been effectively ambushed at a work party. They'd want to talk about it, to process it, to encourage him to put himself out there, as if grief were something you could outrun by attending enough social events. He set the phone aside and lay back, staring at the ceiling. The house settled around him with familiar creaks and sighs. Outside, rain pattered against the windows. I'm still waiting. But waiting for what, exactly? He told himself he wasn't ready, that Mia needed stability, that work and parenting left no room for anything else. All true, but also convenient excuses for avoiding the terrifying possibility of trying again, of opening himself up to loss, to hurt, to the kind of love that could destroy you when it ended. Sarah's death had taught him that the price of loving someone completely was the devastation of losing them, and Ethan wasn't sure he could afford to pay that price twice. His phone lit up with another text, this one from a number he didn't recognize. Ethan, this is Lena Hart. I got your number from the office directory. I'm so sorry about tonight. I didn't mean to put you on the spot like that. Can we talk? Ethan stared at the message. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to let the whole incident fade into the awkward past. But another part, the part that had felt a flicker of something when Lena's expression shifted from playful to concerned, knew she deserved a response. He typed, "Nothing to apologize for, it was just a game." The reply came immediately. "It wasn't just a game, not by the end. Please. Just coffee? 20 minutes? Ethan hesitated. This was how it started. The small openings, the cracks in the walls. Coffee led to conversation. Conversation led to connection. Connection led to vulnerability. But Lena wasn't asking for vulnerability. She was asking for 20 minutes to apologize for something that wasn't even her fault. Monday, he typed. Office cafeteria. 7:30 a.m. before everyone else gets in. Thank you, came the response. I'll be there. Ethan set the phone down and rolled onto his side, pulling the blanket up. Through the wall, he could hear Mia's soft breathing, a sound that anchored him more than anything else in the world. He'd give Lena her 20 minutes. He'd accept her apology. And then he'd go back to the carefully constructed life that kept him and Mia safe from the chaos of feeling too much. It was a good plan. Simple, manageable, foolproof. Ethan closed his eyes and tried to believe it. Sunday passed in the usual rhythm. Pancakes for breakfast, a trip to the park, homework at the kitchen table while Ethan prepped dinners for the week. Mia chattered about school, about her friend Emma, who had a new puppy, about the upcoming winter concert where her class would sing 3 songs and could Daddy please come. Of course, Ethan promised, writing it on the calendar that hung on the refrigerator. The calendar was color-coded, blue for Mia's activities, red for work deadlines, green for household tasks. It was the kind of organization that had saved his sanity in the early days after Sarah's death, when simply remembering to buy milk felt like an insurmountable challenge. Will Grammy come too? Mia asked, swinging her legs from her chair. I'm sure she will if we invite her. And Uncle Jake? Probably. And your friends from work? Ethan paused in the middle of chopping vegetables. Why would they come? Mia shrugged, drawing elaborate spirals in the margins of her math worksheet. Emma's mom's friends come to stuff. They're really loud and they take lots of pictures. My work friends don't really do that kind of thing, sweetie. Why not? Because I don't have work friends, Ethan thought. Because I've spent 3 years making sure no one gets close enough to be invited to first-grade concerts. They're just busy, he said instead. Now, finish your homework before dinner. But Mia's question lingered. When had his isolation become so complete that even his 7-year-old daughter noticed? He'd thought he was protecting her, providing stability through routine and boundaries. Had he instead modeled loneliness? That night, after Mia was asleep, Ethan found himself looking through old photos on his laptop. There he was at his own company parties before Sarah got sick, smiling, laughing, arm around his wife's waist, while colleagues toasted around them. He barely recognized that version of himself. The transformation hadn't been sudden. Grief didn't work like that. It was incremental, a slow retreat behind walls built one brick at a time. First, he'd stopped going to happy hours because coming home to an empty house hurt too much. Then he'd stopped making lunch plans because small talk felt exhausting. Eventually, he'd perfected the art of being professionally friendly while remaining personally distant. It had felt like survival. Maybe it was just hiding. Ethan closed the laptop and went to bed, but sleep came slowly. His mind kept circling back to tomorrow's conversation with Lena. What would he even say? How did you explain to someone that their innocent question had ripped open scars you'd spent years learning to live with? Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Ethan dropped Mia at school, then drove to the office through rush hour traffic. He arrived at 7:15, giving himself time to prepare mentally before meeting Lena. The cafeteria was empty except for Jerry, the building's maintenance supervisor, who nodded at Ethan while refilling coffee stations. Ethan bought 2 coffees, one black for himself, one vanilla latte because he vaguely remembered Lena ordering that at a staff meeting months ago, and sat at a table by the windows. At exactly 7:30, Lena walked in. She looked different than at the party. No bold dress or high ponytail. Instead, she wore simple black pants and a gray sweater, her hair down around her shoulders, minimal makeup. She looked nervous, Ethan realized, uncertain in a way he'd never seen her. "Hi," she said, approaching the table. "Thank you for meeting me." "I brought coffee," Ethan said, pushing the latte toward her. "I hope vanilla's okay." Lena's eyes widened slightly. "You remembered my order?" "You said it at the budget meeting in October." She sat down slowly, wrapping her hands around the cup. "I didn't think anyone was listening." "I listen to a lot of things," Ethan said. "I just don't usually participate." They sat in silence for a moment. Through the windows, the city was waking up, buses rolling past, pedestrians hurrying toward buildings, the sun glinting off steel and glass. "I'm sorry," Lena finally said. "About Friday. The game, the question, all of it. I should have shut it down when it started getting personal, but I didn't, and—" "It's fine," Ethan interrupted. "Really. It was just a party. People were drinking. Things happen." "It's not fine." Lena's voice was firm. "I saw your face. I know I hurt you, even if I didn't mean to, and I need you to know that I'm sorry and that it won't happen again." Ethan studied her across the table. Her brown eyes were direct, sincere. This wasn't performative apology, the kind people gave to clear their conscience and move on. This was genuine regret. "Why do you care?" he asked quietly. The question seemed to catch her off guard. "What? Why does it matter? We're not friends. We barely know each other. You could have just avoided me for a few weeks until it blew over. Why push for this conversation?" Lena took a sip of her latte, gathering her thoughts. "Because I made it my job to know people here, to make them feel welcome and valued. And I realized Friday night that I've completely failed with you. I've worked here 5 years and I know nothing about you except that you do great work and keep to yourself. I never bothered to ask why. I never considered that maybe there was a reason you keep your distance." "There is," Ethan said. "I know." Lena's voice was gentle. "You don't have to tell me what it is. but I wanted you to know that I see it now. And I'm sorry I didn't see it before." Ethan felt something shift in his chest, a small crack in the carefully maintained armor. This woman, this near stranger, was offering him something rare, recognition without demand. She wasn't pushing for his story or trying to fix him. She was simply acknowledging that his boundaries existed for a reason. "My wife died 3 years ago," Ethan heard himself say. "Cancer. We'd been married 8 years. Our daughter was 4. Lena's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God! Ethan, You asked why I said I'm still waiting. That's why. I'm not waiting for someone new. I'm waiting to..." He trailed off, searching for words that felt true. "I'm waiting to feel like I can be around people without pretending I'm whole when I'm not. I'm waiting for the day when 'Are you married?' is just a question instead of a reminder of everything I lost." Tears welled in Lena's eyes. She blinked them back quickly. "I'm so sorry. For your loss, for bringing it up like that. You didn't know," Ethan said. "How could you? I never told anyone. I keep my personal life completely separate from work because..." He paused, then decided honesty had come this far, might as well finish. "Because if people knew, they'd either pity me or try to fix me. And I can't handle either." Lena nodded slowly. "So you just disappeared into silence." "Into manageable silence," Ethan corrected. "There's a difference. I show up, I do my job, I go home to my daughter. It's simple, it works." "Does it?" The question was soft, not challenging. Ethan didn't answer because the truth was complicated. His system worked in that it got him through days without falling apart, but it also meant Mia asking why Daddy didn't have friends. It meant 3 years of Christmas parties where he hovered by windows counting minutes until escape. It meant going to bed every night in a house that echoed with absence. "I have to make it work," he finally said. "I have a 7-year-old who needs stability. I can't afford to fall apart." "Having friends isn't falling apart," Lena said gently. "It is when you don't have energy for anything beyond survival." "Ethan," she leaned forward, her voice earnest. "You're not just surviving. You're raising a child, building a career, showing up even when it's hard. That's not survival. That's strength." Something in Ethan's throat tightened. He looked away, focusing on the coffee machines across the room. "It doesn't feel like strength. It feels like going through motions." "Maybe," Lena said, "but you're still going. That counts for something." They sat together as the cafeteria slowly filled with early arriving coworkers. Ethan waited for the familiar urge to flee, to end this conversation and retreat behind professional distance. But it didn't come. Instead, he felt something unexpected. Relief. The exhausting weight of being unknown, of carrying his story alone, had lightened just by sharing it. "Thank you," he said finally, "for listening, for not..." He gestured vaguely. "Pitying you?" Lena supplied. "Yeah. Hard to pity someone who's doing something I'm not sure I could do." She finished her latte and stood. "I should get to my desk, but Ethan, if you ever want to grab coffee for real, not an apology meeting, just coffee, I'm here. No pressure, no expectations, just if you want." She left before he could respond, disappearing into the growing crowd of arriving workers. Ethan sat alone with his thoughts and his cooling coffee. The conversation had been terrifying and uncomfortable and honest in ways he'd avoided for years. But he'd survived it. More than that, he felt lighter. Maybe Lena was right. Maybe showing up to conversations, to moments of vulnerability, to the terrifying possibility of connection was its own kind of strength. Or maybe it was just Monday morning and he was overthinking everything. Either way, he'd told someone his story. And the world hadn't ended. That felt like progress. The week following their coffee conversation moved differently for both of them. Ethan found himself noticing Lena in ways he hadn't before. Not romantically, but with a new awareness that she existed as more than just background noise in the office landscape. He'd see her in the hallway talking with junior associates, her laugh carrying over the cubicle walls, and instead of feeling irritated by the disruption, he felt something closer to curiosity. How did she do it? How did she move through the world with such apparent ease, collecting people like a garden collects butterflies? For her part, Lena couldn't stop thinking about their conversation. She'd replayed it dozens of times, examining each moment, each careful word Ethan had chosen. 3 years. He'd carried that loss for 3 years while walking these same hallways, sitting in the same meetings, existing among colleagues who knew nothing about the weight he bore daily. The realization sat heavy in her chest like a stone she couldn't swallow. On Thursday afternoon, Lena was reviewing contracts in the break room when Marcus walked in, immediately launching into gossip about the holiday party as if it were breaking news rather than 5 days old. "I heard Ethan Blake completely lost it at the party," Marcus said, pouring coffee with the dramatic flair of someone about to reveal classified information. "Like, just walked out in the middle of a game because someone asked if he was married." Lena's pen stilled on the page. "He didn't lose it. He just left." Same difference. Super weird though, right? I mean, it was just a question. Marcus dumped 3 sugars into his mug, stirring loudly. Stephanie thinks he's secretly divorced and bitter about it. James thinks he's in witness protection. I personally think he's just socially awkward and got embarrassed. "Or maybe," Lena said, her voice sharp enough to cut through Marcus's rambling, "he has a private life that's none of our business, and we should respect that instead of turning it into office entertainment." Marcus blinked, surprised by her tone. "Whoa, I didn't mean anything by it, just making conversation." "Well, make it about something else." Lena gathered her papers and stood. "Ethan's personal life isn't a puzzle for us to solve." She left before Marcus could respond, her heart pounding with an anger she hadn't expected. It shouldn't matter this much. Ethan was a grown man who could handle office gossip, but the casual way Marcus had dissected Friday's events, turning genuine pain into speculation and entertainment, made her want to shake every person in this building until they understood that silence sometimes protected wounds too deep to display. The encounter stayed with her through the afternoon. During a budget meeting, she caught herself watching Ethan across the conference table. He was presenting quarterly projections with his usual calm competence, his voice steady, his data impeccable. No one would ever guess that behind that professional exterior was a man raising a daughter alone while navigating grief most people couldn't imagine. He was so convincing in his normalcy that Lena wondered how many other people walked through the world like this, broken but functional, grieving but present, holding themselves together through sheer will. After the meeting, as people filtered out discussing lunch plans and weekend activities, Lena found herself walking alongside Ethan toward the elevators. "Good presentation," she said. "Thanks." He pressed the up button, hands in his pockets. "You asked good questions about the third quarter variance." "That's literally my job." She smiled. "Asking annoying questions about numbers." "They weren't annoying, they were thorough." The elevator arrived. They stepped in together, along with 2 people from accounting who immediately started a loud conversation about a client's latest demands. Lena and Ethan stood in companionable silence as the elevator climbed. When it reached the 3rd floor and the accounting duo exited, Lena made a split-second decision. "I overheard Marcus in the break room earlier," she said as the doors closed, leaving them alone. "Spreading theories about Friday night." Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Let me guess. I'm either secretly married, recently divorced, or part of a witness protection program." "All 3, actually, though James added the witness protection angle." "Creative." His tone was neutral, but Lena caught the edge underneath. "I shut it down," she said. "Told Marcus to find something else to gossip about. But I wanted you to know that people are talking, in case that matters to you." The elevator reached the 4th floor. Ethan held the door open with one hand, considering her. "It doesn't matter. People always talk. The key is not giving them anything new to talk about." "Is that why you keep so quiet? To starve the rumor mill?" "Partially." He stepped out into the hallway, and Lena followed. "But mostly because I don't have the energy to manage other people's reactions to my life. It's easier to just not share it." They walked slowly toward Lena's office, the corridor empty during the lunch hour. Lena thought about what he'd said, not having energy to manage reactions. She'd never considered emotional labor from that angle before. The exhausting work of receiving people's pity and concern and awkward attempts at comfort. "For what it's worth," she said, stopping outside her door, "I think Marcus is an idiot. And most people here would probably surprise you with their capacity for basic human decency if you gave them the chance. Probably, Ethan agreed. Boo. Boo. But probably isn't the same as certainly, and I can't afford the probably right now. He continued down the hall to his own office, leaving Lena with the uncomfortable realization that she'd just suggested he take a risk she had no right to ask for. She barely knew him. Who was she to push him toward vulnerability he'd explicitly said he couldn't handle? That evening, Lena stayed late finishing a contract review that had been nagging at her for days. The office had emptied out by 7, leaving only the hum of computers and distant cleaning crews. She was packing her bag when her phone rang, her sister Rachel calling from Portland. "Please tell me you're not still at work," Rachel said by way of greeting. "I'm leaving right now. What's up?" "Just checking in. You sounded weird when we talked on Sunday." Lena locked her office and headed for the elevators. "I wasn't weird." "You were definitely weird, distracted. Is everything okay?" The elevator opened and Lena stepped inside, grateful for the privacy. "There's this guy at work." "Not like that," she added quickly, knowing where Rachel's mind would go. I accidentally heard him at the holiday party and I can't stop thinking about it." "What did you do? Sleep with his wife?" "Rachel, I'm serious." Her sister's tone shifted, picking up on Lena's genuine distress. "Okay, sorry, what happened?" As the elevator descended, Lena found herself recounting the whole story, the truth or dare game, Stephanie's suggestion, Ethan's answer, the coffee conversation afterward. She left out the specific details about his wife's death, keeping that confidence, but conveyed the general shape of her mistake. "So let me get this straight," Rachel said when she finished. "You asked a question during a party game that everyone was pressuring you to ask. It went badly, you apologized sincerely, and he accepted your apology. What exactly are you still beating yourself up about?" "I don't know." Lena pushed through the lobby doors into the cold night. "I just keep thinking about how alone he must feel, and how many people in this building walk past him every day and have no idea what he's dealing with." "Lena," Rachel's voice carried the particular tone of an older sister about to deliver unwanted wisdom. "You can't fix this guy's loneliness. You can be kind to him, sure, but don't make his pain your project. I'm not trying to fix him." "Really? Because you're literally calling me at 7 p.m. from your office, agonizing over a coworker you barely know. That sounds like project behavior to me." Lena stopped walking, standing under a streetlight as pedestrians flowed around her. Was Rachel right? Was she making Ethan's situation into something she needed to solve because solving problems was what she did, how she made sense of the world? "I just want to help," she said quietly. "I know you do, Lena. You want to help everyone. It's one of your best qualities, and sometimes your biggest flaw." Rachel's voice softened. "But this guy has explicitly told you he doesn't want help. He wants to be left alone. Maybe the kindest thing you can do is respect that." They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up, but Rachel's words stayed with Lena during her subway ride home. Maybe she was making this about herself. Maybe her need to make things right was just another form of intrusion, a different way of not respecting Ethan's boundaries. She resolved to back off, to let Monday's conversation be the end of it. Ethan knew she'd listened. He knew she cared. That would have to be enough. The resolution lasted until Friday morning, when everything changed. Lena was in the middle of a client call when her assistant knocked urgently on her door. She held up a finger, 1 minute, but the assistant shook her head and mouthed, "Emergency." "I'm sorry. Can you hold for just 1 moment?" Lena said into the phone, then muted it. "What's wrong?" "It's Ethan Blake. He's in conference room C, and he looks like he's about to have a breakdown. Richard Moss is in there with him, and they're arguing." Richard Moss was the senior partner who handled Ethan's accounts, notoriously demanding, short-tempered, and currently in the running for Partner of the Year, which meant he was even more insufferable than usual. "Why are you telling me this?" Lena asked, though she was already standing, her client call forgotten. "Because you're the only one who seems to actually talk to Ethan, and someone needs to de-escalate whatever's happening before Richard fires him or Ethan quits." Lena grabbed her phone. "Tell my client I'll call back in 10 minutes. Family emergency." Conference room C was at the end of the 4th-floor corridor, its glass walls usually providing transparency but currently obscured by hastily drawn blinds. Lena could hear raised voices as she approached. Richard's booming baritone and Ethan's lower, strained responses. She knocked once and opened the door without waiting for permission. Both men turned. Richard's face was red, his tie loosened, papers scattered across the table between them. Ethan stood on the opposite side, his posture rigid, jaw clenched, looking like a man one word away from detonation. "This is a private meeting," Richard said. "And I'm interrupting it," Lena replied smoothly. "Richard, I need to borrow Ethan for the Davis contract review. It can't wait. We're in the middle of... The Davis contract is worth $2 million, and the client is waiting on my call right now." Lena's voice carried the authority of someone who knew exactly how much leverage they had. "Unless you want to explain to the managing partners why we lost a major account because you couldn't spare Ethan for 20 minutes? Richard's mouth opened and closed. He wasn't stupid enough to escalate a conflict when money was on the table. 20 minutes. Then he comes back here and we finish this conversation. "Of course." Lena turned to Ethan. "Shall we?" Ethan looked between her and Richard, clearly calculating whether this rescue was worth accepting. Then he grabbed his notepad and followed her out without a word. They walked in silence until they reached the emergency stairwell at the far end of the building, a space rarely used, which meant rarely monitored. Lena pushed through the door and climbed one flight before stopping on the landing. "There is no Davis contract emergency, is there?" Ethan said. "There's barely a Davis contract. They're still in preliminary discussions." Lena leaned against the railing. "What the hell was that about?" Ethan set his notepad down and pressed his palms against his eyes. For a long moment, he just breathed, his shoulders rising and falling with the effort of regaining control. When he finally looked up, his eyes were bloodshot. "My childcare fell through," he said. "The babysitter I've used for 3 years just texted that she's taking a job in another state, effective immediately. And Richard needs me to fly to Chicago on Monday for a client presentation that he claims I should have known about weeks ago, except he literally emailed me the details this morning. Can't someone else go to Chicago? Richard says it has to be me because I built the presentation deck, and he's technically right. I know this account better than anyone, but I can't just leave Mia with nobody. My mother's in Arizona visiting my aunt. My brother has his own kids and a full-time job. I don't have backup." The desperation in his voice was raw, unfiltered. This wasn't about work stress or difficult bosses. This was about the fundamental impossibility of being a single parent while maintaining a demanding career. "So tell Richard you can't go," Lena said. Ethan laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "And tell him what? That I need to stay home because I don't have childcare? He already thinks I'm uncommitted because I leave at 5 every day. This would just confirm that I'm not serious about my career." "That's not fair. Everyone knows you do excellent work." "Excellent work from 9 to 5, sure, but this job increasingly demands more. Late nights, weekend emergencies, spontaneous client trips. And I can't do any of it because I have a 7-year-old who needs dinner and homework help and someone to tuck her in at night." He slumped against the wall. "Sarah and I used to tag team. One of us could travel because the other held down the fort at home. But now there's just me, and I can't be in 2 places at once." Lena watched him carefully. The professional mask had completely fallen away, revealing the exhausted father underneath. She thought about Rachel's warning, "Don't make his problems your project." But this wasn't about fixing Ethan's loneliness or healing his grief. This was a concrete problem with a concrete solution. "I'll do it," she heard herself say. Ethan looked up. "What?" "I'll go to Chicago. Give me your presentation deck and I'll present it. I've sat in on enough of Richard's client meetings to know the drill, and I'm good at thinking on my feet." "Lena, you can't." "Why not? I don't have kids. I don't have any major deadlines Monday. And honestly, pissing off Richard by taking over his pet presentation sounds like a pretty good Friday." A smile ghosted across Ethan's face before fading. Richard would never agree to it. "So we don't ask him. We tell him." Lena pulled out her phone. "I'll send him an email right now. Richard, due to an urgent personal matter, Ethan Blake is unable to travel to Chicago on Monday. I've reviewed the presentation materials and am prepared to present on his behalf. Please confirm the flight details." Done. "He'll lose his mind." "Probably, but he won't pull the presentation because that would mean admitting to the client that we're not prepared. And Richard would rather die than look unprepared." She hit send before she could reconsider. "Besides, what's he going to do? Fire both of us?" Ethan stared at her like she'd just spoken a foreign language. Why would you do this? You don't owe me anything. I know I don't. Lena met his gaze. But you told me on Monday that you don't have energy to manage people's reactions to your life. So I'm not giving you a reaction. I'm giving you a solution. Take it or don't, but the offer stands. For several seconds, Ethan didn't move. Then, slowly, something in his expression shifted. The perpetual tension in his jaw eased, his shoulders dropped, and his eyes filled with something that might have been relief or gratitude, or simply the recognition that someone had just thrown him a lifeline when he was drowning. Thank you, he said quietly. I don't know how to thank you. You can start by sending me that presentation deck before 3 p.m. so I have time to review it over the weekend. Lena started back down the stairs. And Ethan, next time your childcare falls through, you call me first instead of letting Richard back you into a corner. Deal? Deal. They emerged from the stairwell to find Lena's assistant frantically searching for them, phone in hand. Your client is getting impatient, and Richard is demanding to know where Ethan is. Tell Richard that Ethan is briefing me on the Chicago presentation, Lena said, and tell my client I'll call them back in 5 minutes with a full explanation. She disappeared into her office, leaving Ethan standing in the hallway with his notepad and the unfamiliar sensation of having been helped without strings attached. An hour later, Richard stormed into Lena's office with Ethan's presentation deck in hand and fury radiating from every pore. You want to explain this? He slapped the deck on her desk. Lena looked up from her computer with practiced calm. Explain what? I sent a very clear email. You can't just hijack a client presentation I've been planning for weeks. I didn't hijack anything. I offered to help when a colleague had a personal emergency. That's what team players do, Richard. Team players ask permission before, with respect, there wasn't time to ask permission. The client meeting is Monday morning. Ethan can't go. I can. End of story. She leaned back in her chair. Unless you'd prefer to go yourself. I'm sure the managing partners would understand why you're billing 3 times my rate for a presentation you didn't build. Richard's face went purple. They both knew he'd never present someone else's work. His ego wouldn't survive the potential questions he couldn't answer. He needed either Ethan or someone Ethan had briefed thoroughly. This is highly irregular, he said. So is demanding last-minute travel from a single parent with no notice. Lena smiled pleasantly. I'll be on the 9 a.m. flight Monday. Send me the client's address and any background materials you think I need. Oh, and Richard, next time you schedule a critical client meeting, maybe give your team more than 48 hours notice. Just a thought. She turned back to her computer, dismissing him. For a moment, Richard looked like he might explode. Then he grabbed the deck and stormed out, slamming her door hard enough to rattle the nameplate. Lena's hand shook slightly as she returned to her email, but satisfaction warmed her chest. She'd just made an enemy of one of the firm's senior partners, but she'd also kept Ethan from having to choose between his daughter and his career. Rachel's voice echoed in her head. Don't make his problems your project. Maybe she was. Or maybe this was just what decent people did for each other when the system demanded more than was reasonable to give. Either way, the decision was made. Monday, she'd be in Chicago, and Ethan would be home with his daughter, where he needed to be. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Then she realized Ethan must have gotten her cell from the office directory the same way she'd gotten his. The message read, "You didn't have to do that." She typed back, "I know, I wanted to." A pause. Then, "My daughter has a soccer game tomorrow, 10 a.m. at Riverside Park. If you're free and want to see why I'm not willing to miss these things, you're welcome to come." Lena stared at the invitation. This was more than a thank you. This was Ethan opening a door he'd explicitly said he kept closed. This was him letting her into the part of his life that mattered most. She thought about Rachel's warning one more time. Then she thought about Ethan's face in the stairwell, about the weight of carrying everything alone, about the small grace of showing up when someone needed you. "I'll be there," she wrote back. "What's your daughter's name?" "Mia. Number 7. She plays defense and takes it very seriously. Can't wait to meet her." Lena set her phone down and returned to work, but her mind was already jumping ahead to tomorrow morning. She'd go to the game. She'd meet Mia. And maybe, just maybe, she'd begin to understand what Ethan was protecting when he built his walls so carefully. The rest of Friday passed in a blur of contracts and emails in preparation for Monday's presentation. By the time Lena left the office at 6, she'd reviewed Ethan's entire deck twice and made notes on every client detail Richard had grudgingly provided. The presentation was solid, clear, data-driven, anticipating objections before they arose. Ethan did excellent work. She just needed to deliver it without screwing up. That night, she lay in bed thinking about the strange turn her week had taken. One accidental question at a holiday party had somehow led to this, to volunteering for a business trip, to being invited to a children's soccer game, to becoming tangentially involved in the life of a man who'd been a stranger 10 days ago. She didn't know where this was going, didn't know if Ethan wanted friendship or just gratitude, didn't know if helping him today would lead to anything beyond a polite wave in the office hallway next week. But she knew she'd be at Riverside Park tomorrow at 10 a.m. And she knew that sometimes the most important decisions were the ones you made without fully understanding why they mattered. Saturday morning arrived bright and cold. Lena dressed in jeans and a warm jacket, grabbed coffee from her favorite cafe, and took the subway to Riverside Park. The soccer field spread across the west side of the park, bordered by bare trees and the distant sound of the river. Parents clustered in groups along the sidelines, clutching travel mugs and shouting encouragement. Lena spotted Ethan immediately. He stood slightly apart from the other parents, hands in his coat pockets, watching the field with focused attention. On the grass, small figures in mismatched jerseys chased a ball with more enthusiasm than skill. "You came," Ethan said as she approached, surprise and something else, maybe relief, crossing his face. "I said I would." Lena took a spot beside him. "Which one's Mia?" "Number 7, dark ponytail. Currently yelling at her teammate for not staying in position." Lena followed his gaze and found a small girl with fierce concentration written across her face, gesturing emphatically at another player. Even from a distance, the family resemblance was clear. Mia had Ethan's serious expression, his careful way of assessing situations before acting. "She takes after you," Lena observed. "Terrifyingly so." Ethan's mouth quirked in an almost smile. "Her mother was the spontaneous one. Mia got my tendency to overthink everything." It was the first time he'd mentioned his wife casually, without the weight of grief making every word heavy. Lena took it as a good sign. They watched in silence as the game progressed, a chaotic affair where most of the kids seemed unclear on the rules but entirely committed to running very fast in whatever direction the ball went. Mia, however, played with strategic precision, positioning herself to intercept passes and directing her teammates with authority that seemed disproportionate to her size. "She's actually good," Lena said, impressed, as Mia stole the ball from an opposing player and sent it upfield. "She works at it. Practices in the backyard every night after dinner." Ethan's voice carried unmistakable pride. "She told me last week she wants to play in the World Cup someday. I didn't have the heart to explain the statistical improbability." "Why would you?" "Let her dream big." That's what Sarah would have said." He paused. "She believed in encouraging impossible dreams, said they made better stories even when they didn't come true." Lena glanced at him. Ethan's eyes hadn't left the field, but his expression had softened into something resembling peace. This was what she'd been missing, she realized. Context. In the office, Ethan was grief and walls and careful distance. Here, watching his daughter play soccer on a cold Saturday morning, he was just a father doing his best. The game ended with Mia's team winning 3-2, largely due to Mia's defensive work. As the kids high-fived and parents began gathering gear, Mia spotted her father and came running over, face flushed with victory. "Did you see my steal in the second half?" she demanded, breathless. "Emma was completely out of position, and I had to cover for her, but I got the ball, and—" She stopped mid-sentence, noticing Lena. "Who's this?" "This is my friend Lena from work," Ethan said. "Lena, this is Mia. You have a friend from work?" Mia's eyes went wide, as if Ethan had just announced he'd discovered a new planet. "Like an actual friend?" "Mia," Ethan said, a warning in his tone. But Lena laughed, charmed by the child's candor. "Nice to meet you, Mia. Your dad's told me a lot about you." "He has?" Mia looked between them, clearly trying to process this development. "What did he say?" "That you're an excellent soccer player and you take defense very seriously." Defense is the most important position, Mia said solemnly. If you don't have good defense, you can't win games. Emma doesn't understand that, but I'm working on teaching her. Sounds like you're a good teammate. I try. Mia turned to Ethan. Can we get pancakes? I'm starving. Ethan checked his watch. Sure. Say goodbye to Coach Mike first. As Mia ran off to join her teammates, Ethan turned to Lena with an apologetic expression. Sorry, she's not exactly subtle. She's wonderful, Lena said honestly, and clearly surprised you brought someone to her game. You're the first person from work who's ever met her. He zipped his jacket against the cold. Actually, you're the first person outside family who's met her since Sarah died. I don't usually mix those parts of my life. Why did you this time? Ethan considered the question as Mia hugged her coach and gathered her water bottle. Because you showed up yesterday when I needed someone, and I wanted you to understand what you showed up for. It's not just me trying to balance a career. It's Mia. It's soccer games and homework and goodnight stories. It's a whole person who depends on me being present. I get it, Lena said softly. And for what it's worth, I think you're doing an incredible job. Most days I'm just barely holding it together. That's still holding it together. Mia returned, swinging her water bottle and chattering about the game's highlights. As they walked toward the parking lot, she inserted herself between Ethan and Lena, looking up at the latter with curious eyes. Are you coming to pancakes with us? She asked. Lena glanced at Ethan, not wanting to intrude. He gave a small nod. If that's okay with you, Lena said to Mia, it's definitely okay. Dad never has friends over. This is exciting. They ended up at a diner 3 blocks from the park, squeezing into a corner booth with sticky menus and weak coffee. Mia ordered chocolate chip pancakes and proceeded to tell Lena everything about her life in enthusiastic detail. Her best friend Emma, her teacher Mrs. Rodriguez, her favorite books, her plans for the science fair. Ethan interjected occasionally with corrections or gentle reminders about inside voices, but mostly he just watched his daughter with quiet affection. Lena found herself relaxing into the moment, asking questions and laughing at Mia's stories. This felt nothing like the careful conversations at work where every word carried professional weight. This was simple, real, the kind of Saturday morning thousands of families were having across the city. Dad says you're going to Chicago on Monday instead of him, Mia said through a mouthful of pancakes. Mia, don't talk with food in your mouth, Ethan said automatically. She swallowed dramatically. Sorry, but you are, right? Going to Chicago? That's right, Lena confirmed. Thank you, Mia said with unexpected seriousness. Dad was really stressed about it yesterday. He doesn't get stressed a lot, so when he does, it's kind of scary. Mia, Ethan started, but Lena interrupted. You're welcome, she told Mia. And your dad has good reasons to be stressed sometimes. He has a lot of responsibilities. I know, me, Mia grinned. I'm a handful. Grammy says so. They finished breakfast with Mia entertaining them with increasingly elaborate stories about her classmates' dramas. When the check came, Ethan tried to pay for Lena's meal, but she insisted on splitting it. Outside the diner, as Mia ran ahead to look in shop windows, Ethan turned to Lena. Thank you, he said. For coming today? For breakfast? For all of it. It was fun. Mia's great. She is. He watched his daughter press her nose against a toy store window. She's the reason I keep going on days when it feels impossible. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. He paused, then added, and I'm lucky you hijacked Richard's presentation. I know I said it yesterday, but I need you to understand, what you did wasn't small. It was everything. Lena's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. You would have figured something out. Maybe. Or maybe I would have had to choose between disappointing my daughter and tanking my career. You gave me a third option. That matters more than you know. Before she could respond, Mia called out, Dad, they have the robot kit I wanted. Can we get it? We'll add it to your birthday list, Ethan called back, then to Lena. I should go before she finds 10 more things to add to that list. Go. I'll see you Monday when I get back from Chicago. Good luck with Richard's client. They're demanding but fair. I'll manage, Lena smiled. Tell Mia I said goodbye. She watched them walk away, Ethan's hand finding Mia's, Mia chattering endlessly about robots and birthday parties and soccer strategies. They looked like what they were, A family, complete despite its incompleteness. As Lena headed to the subway, she thought about what Ethan had said. You gave me a third option. She'd never thought of help that way before, not as solving problems or fixing people, but as expanding possibilities, creating space for people to make choices they couldn't make alone. Maybe that was what friendship looked like in its earliest stages. Not grand gestures or deep conversations, but small acts that said, I see you. I'm here. You don't have to carry everything by yourself. Monday would come. She'd go to Chicago, present Ethan's work, and deal with whatever fallout came from crossing Richard. But right now, walking through the cold afternoon with the memory of Mia's laughter still ringing in her ears, Lena felt certain she'd made the right choice. Some connections didn't need to be understood to be worth protecting. Some people didn't need to be fixed to be worth knowing, and sometimes showing up was enough. The Chicago presentation went better than Lena had dared to hope. The clients, a manufacturing firm looking to restructure their supplier contracts, responded well to her confident delivery and thorough understanding of the nuances Ethan had built into the proposal. She fielded their questions smoothly, drawing on her own contracts experience when the discussion veered into technical territory, and by the time she boarded her return flight Monday evening, she had their verbal commitment to move forward. Richard would hate that she'd succeeded. The thought made her smile as the plane lifted into the winter sky. She texted Ethan from the airport. Nailed it. Client loved the presentation. We'll fill you in tomorrow. His response came quickly. I never doubted you would. Thank you again. Then a moment later, Mia wants to know if you like pizza. Apparently she's decided you need to come to dinner sometime. Lena's chest warmed at the invitation, even delivered secondhand through a 7-year-old's demand. Tell Mia I love pizza and I'd be honored. She arrived back in New York close to midnight, exhausted but satisfied. The next morning, she walked into the office expecting some version of fallout from Richard, a passive-aggressive email maybe, or pointed comments in the next partners meeting. What she didn't expect was to find Ethan waiting outside her office at 7:15, 2 coffees in hand. You're here early, she said, unlocking her door. Wanted to catch you before the circus started. He handed her a vanilla latte. Also wanted to hear how it really went, not just the client-approved version. They settled into the chairs by her window, and Lena recounted the presentation in detail, the client's initial skepticism, the moment when the CFO's questions became genuinely curious rather than challenging, the handshake at the end that felt like a promise. Ethan listened with the careful attention she was beginning to recognize as characteristic, asking clarifying questions and nodding at the points where she'd improvised beyond his original deck. You did more than present my work, he said when she finished. You enhanced it. That section on phased implementation wasn't in my version. It seemed like what they needed to hear. The original timeline was aggressive for a company their size. You were right. I was thinking about ideal conditions, not their reality. He sipped his coffee thoughtfully. Richard's going to take credit for this, you know. He'll tell the managing partners that his brilliant strategy and leadership secured the account. Let him. I don't need credit. I just needed to keep you from having to choose between Mia and your job. Something flickered across Ethan's face. Gratitude mixed with something deeper, something that looked almost like wonder. How did you become this person? What person? Someone who does things for other people without needing anything in return. Lena considered the question. My parents were immigrants, came here from Taiwan with nothing, built a life through community support, and people helping when they didn't have to. I grew up understanding that sometimes the most important currency is showing up for each other. She smiled. Also, I'm genetically incapable of watching someone struggle when I can help. My sister says it's both my best and worst quality. Your sister sounds wise. She is, also deeply annoying in her correctness. They sat in comfortable silence as the office began waking up around them. Footsteps in the hallway, the distant ding of elevators, voices carrying from the break room. Ethan checked his watch and stood reluctantly. I should get to my desk before Richard summons me to dissect every detail of your presentation. He paused at the door. Mia wasn't kidding about pizza, by the way. If you're free Friday night, we usually order in and watch movies. Nothing fancy, just... I'd love to, Lena interrupted before he could talk himself out of the invitation. What time? 6? Mia goes to bed at 8:30, so you wouldn't have to stay late or anything. Ethan, She looked at him directly. Stop giving me exit strategies. I want to come. 6 is perfect. He nodded, a small smile breaking through his usual careful expression. Okay. See you Friday then. After he left, Lena sat motionless for a long moment, coffee cooling in her hands. Something had shifted between them over the past week. Some invisible line crossed from professional courtesy to genuine friendship. She could feel it in the easy way they talked now, in Ethan's willingness to invite her into his life, in her own certainty that she wanted to be there. Rachel would have opinions about this, probably delivered with maximum sisterly judgment. But Rachel wasn't here, and Lena was trusting her own instincts. They'd been right so far. The week progressed with surprising normalcy. Richard did indeed take credit for the Chicago success, sending a firm-wide email about his team's excellent work securing a major client. Lena's name appeared in the 3rd paragraph, buried among acknowledgments. Ethan's didn't appear at all. Unbelievable, Marcus said when the email landed Wednesday morning, appearing in Lena's doorway with righteous indignation. You flew to Chicago on 2 days' notice and Richard gets the glory? That's how it works? Lena didn't look up from her contract review. Senior partners get credit, junior staff get experience. Still feels wrong. Most things about this place do. We work here anyway. Marcus lingered, clearly wanting to say more. Finally, people are talking, about you and Ethan. Now Lena did look up. What about us? That you're friends now. That you went to his kid's soccer game. That something happened at the holiday party that none of us understood. He held up his hands defensively. I'm not fishing for gossip. Just thought you should know the rumor mill is active. Let it be active. Ethan's my friend. End of story. Is it though? Marcus's expression was genuinely curious rather than malicious. And Ethan Blake doesn't have friends here. He has colleagues he tolerates. The fact that he's actually talking to you, letting you meet his daughter, that's significant. Maybe he just needed someone to show up without expecting anything in return. Maybe. Marcus shrugged. Or maybe you're the first person here who bothered to see him as something other than the weird, quiet guy who leaves at 5 every day. After Marcus left, Lena sat with his words. Was that what she'd done? Simply seen Ethan when everyone else had looked past him? It seemed too simple, too small to account for the connection that had formed between them. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the most profound shifts happened through accumulations of small moments. A coffee conversation, a rescued meeting, a Saturday morning at a soccer field. Friday arrived with the particular energy of weekends approaching. Lena left work at 4:30, went home to change into jeans and a comfortable sweater, and took the subway to Ethan's neighborhood. He'd texted her the address earlier, a quiet residential street in Queens, lined with modest single-family homes and bare winter trees. She found the house easily, a tidy 2-story with a blue door and a small front yard. Before she could knock, the door flew open and Mia appeared, grinning broadly. You came, she announced, as if there had been serious doubt. I said I would. Lena stepped inside, immediately enveloped by warmth and the smell of something cooking. Is that garlic bread? Dad's making it from scratch because I told him we couldn't just order everything. Mia took Lena's coat with surprising formality. He said you deserved proper food, not just pizza from a box. Mia, stop narrating everything I said, Ethan called from what must be the kitchen. Lena's going to think I was stressed about this. You were stressed about this, Mia yelled back, then confided to Lena in a stage whisper. He changed his shirt 3 times. Lena bit back a laugh and followed Mia through a living room that was clearly child-dominated. Toys in organized bins, drawings taped to one wall, a bookshelf overflowing with picture books and chapter books in equal measure. But there were also touches of adult life carefully maintained, a decent sound system, framed photographs on the mantel, a coffee table that looked expensive and well cared for. The kitchen was small but immaculate, with Ethan at the counter slicing bread while sauce simmered on the stove. He looked different here, Lena thought. More relaxed. At home in a way he never seemed at the office. Ignore everything my daughter just told you, he said without turning around. She's an unreliable narrator. I am extremely reliable, Mia protested, climbing onto a stool at the counter. I only tell the truth. The truth as you interpret it, which is often creatively enhanced. That's just called being interesting, Dad. Lena laughed, settling onto another stool. Can I help with anything? You can tell me if this sauce tastes okay. I'm trying a new recipe and Mia's palate is unreliable. I have a very reliable palate, Mia said. I just don't like mushrooms and Dad keeps trying to hide them in things. Because mushrooms are good for you. So is broccoli, but I don't see you hiding that in sauce. Ethan handed Lena a spoon with a small amount of marinara. She tasted it carefully, rich, well-balanced, with a hint of something unexpected. Is that fennel? You caught it. Too much? No, it's perfect. Gives it depth without overpowering the tomatoes. Ethan's face brightened with the particular pleasure of someone whose cooking had been genuinely appreciated. Thank you. Sarah always said my sauces were too timid. I've been trying to be braver with seasoning. It was the second time this week he'd mentioned his wife without the comment being weighed down by visible grief. Lena took it as a sign of something, healing, maybe, or at least the ability to hold memory and present moment in the same breath. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. Mia dominated conversation with stories from school, occasionally interrupted by Ethan's gentle corrections or clarifications. They had clearly established rhythms. Mia knew without being told to clear her plate. Ethan automatically cut her pizza into smaller pieces. They moved around each other in the kitchen with the practiced ease of long partnership. Watching them, Lena felt a pang of something she couldn't quite name. Not envy, exactly. More like recognition of what she'd been missing in her own life. She had friends, sure. A career she was good at. A nice apartment, and enough money to travel occasionally. But she didn't have this deep daily intimacy with another person, the sense of being fundamentally necessary to someone else's life. Earth to Lena, Mia said, waving a hand in front of her face. Dad asked if you want to watch a movie with us. Sorry, spaced out for a second. Lena smiled. What movie? Mia's been campaigning for an animated film about dragons, Ethan said, but I'm willing to negotiate. Dragons are excellent, Lena said seriously to Mia. I'm in. They migrated to the living room, where Ethan queued up the movie while Mia constructed an elaborate nest of blankets and pillows on the couch. Without discussion, she positioned herself between Ethan and Lena, as if establishing that this was a unit of 3 for the evening. The movie was predictably charming, a young Viking befriending a dragon while learning that differences could be strengths. Mia provided running commentary on the dragon physics and character motivations until Ethan gently reminded her that some people might want to actually hear the dialogue. She subsided into concentrated watching, gradually leaning more heavily against her father's side. About halfway through, Lena felt her phone buzz. She ignored it, not wanting to break the spell of this simple evening, but it buzzed again, insistent, and she glanced down to see Rachel's name. Mom's in the hospital, the text read. Heart attack. She's stable, but you should come. Lena's entire body went cold. She read the message 3 times, trying to make it say something different. Beside her, Ethan must have sensed the shift because he glanced over, his expression immediately concerned. What's wrong? He asked quietly. Lena's voice caught. My mom, she's in the hospital. I need to go. She was already standing, reaching for her phone to call Rachel back, her mind racing through logistics. Portland was a 5-hour flight. She'd need to book a ticket tonight, pack, call work, figure out how long she'd need to be gone. Lena. Ethan's hand on her arm stopped her spiraling. Breathe, tell me what happened. Heart attack. My sister says she's stable, but the words tumbled out disconnected, panicked. I need to get to Portland, tonight if possible. There's probably a red-eye I can catch if I leave now. Okay, let's think this through. Ethan's voice was calm, grounding. First, call your sister and get details. Then we'll figure out flights. Mia had paused the movie and was watching with wide, worried eyes. Is Lena's mom going to be okay? We don't know yet, sweetie, Ethan said gently, but Lena needs to go see her. Why don't you go get ready for bed while I help her figure out travel plans? Can I help too? Bed first. I'll come tuck you in soon. Mia looked like she might argue, but something in Ethan's expression convinced her otherwise. She gave Lena an impulsive hug, quick and fierce, before disappearing upstairs. Lena stood in the middle of the living room, phone in hand, trying to remember how to function. This wasn't like her. She was the person who handled crises calmly, who made lists and executed plans. But standing in Ethan's house with the news of her mother's heart attack echoing in her skull, she felt completely untethered. "Sit," Ethan said, guiding her back to the couch. "Call your sister. I'm going to make you tea, and then we'll book you a flight." He disappeared into the kitchen while Lena dialed Rachel with shaking hands. Her sister answered on the first ring. "Is she okay?" Lena asked immediately. "What happened?" "She collapsed at the grocery store. Chest pain, shortness of breath, classic symptoms. They got her to the hospital fast and did emergency surgery. 2 stents in her coronary arteries." Rachel's voice was tight with stress. "She's in recovery now. Doctors say the next 24 hours are critical, but her vital signs are strong." "I'm coming. I'll be on the first flight I can get." "Lena, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do. She's my mother." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Okay. Text me your flight details. I'll pick you up at the airport." They talked for a few more minutes, Rachel providing medical details that Lena only half processed. When she hung up, Ethan was back with tea and his laptop. "Tell me what you need," he said, sitting beside her. "A flight to Portland. Tonight, if possible, tomorrow morning at the latest." His fingers flew across the keyboard. "There's a red-eye at 11:40. Gets you there around 2 a.m. local time. I can book it right now if you want." "Yes, please." While Ethan handled the booking, Lena tried to organize her thoughts. She'd need to call work first thing in the morning, arrange coverage for her cases, pack enough clothes for at least a week. Her mother would need help after she was discharged, someone to manage medications, drive to follow-up appointments, make sure she was following doctor's orders. Rachel had kids and a job. The burden would fall on Lena. "Booked," Ethan said, turning the laptop toward her. "Confirmation is in your email. Do you need a ride to the airport?" "I can take a cab." "Lena." He waited until she looked at him. "Do you need a ride to the airport?" The gentleness in his voice nearly broke her. "Yes. Please. If it's not too much trouble." "It's not." He checked his watch. "It's 7:40 now. If you go home and pack, I can pick you up at 10:15. That'll get you to JFK with plenty of time." "What about Mia?" "She'll be asleep by 9. My neighbor Mrs. Chen can sit with her for an hour. She's done it before." Lena wanted to argue, to insist she could manage alone, but the truth was she couldn't. Not right now. Not with her mind consumed by images of her mother on an operating table, by the terrifying fragility of parents who'd always seemed invincible. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan stood and pulled her to her feet. "Go pack. Don't forget your phone charger and any medications you take regularly. Pack layers. Portland's colder than you think in winter." The practical instructions helped, giving her concrete tasks to focus on. She gathered her coat and bag while Ethan walked her to the door. On impulse, she turned back. "I'm sorry. About dinner, the movie, all of it. This wasn't how I wanted the evening to go." "Lena." His hand found her shoulder, steady and warm. "Your mother had a heart attack. Everything else is background noise. Go take care of your family. That's all that matters right now." She nodded, not trusting her voice, and stepped out into the cold night. The subway ride home passed in a blur. In her apartment, she moved on autopilot, suitcase from the closet, clothes thrown in without much thought, toiletries gathered from the bathroom. She called her boss and left a voicemail explaining the emergency, then sent emails to her active clients letting them know she'd be out of the office indefinitely. At 10:15 exactly, her apartment buzzer rang. She grabbed her suitcase and hurried downstairs to find Ethan waiting in his sensible sedan, engine running. He took her bag without a word and loaded it in the trunk while she climbed into the passenger seat. The drive to JFK was quiet. Traffic was light at this hour, the city's usual chaos muted by late evening. Lena stared out the window at the blur of lights, her mind running through worst-case scenarios she couldn't stop imagining. "She's going to be okay," Ethan said after a while. "You don't know that." "No, but the doctors say she's stable, the surgery went well, and she's in good hands. That's more certainty than you had an hour ago." Lena turned to look at him. "How are you so calm about this?" "Practice." His eyes stayed on the road. "I've had a lot of experience with medical emergencies and hospital waiting rooms. Eventually you learn that panic doesn't help anyone. Action does." "What if the action isn't enough?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but unflinching. Then you deal with that if it comes. But right now, your mother is alive. You're going to see her. Focus on that. They pulled up to the departures terminal. Ethan retrieved Lena's suitcase while she gathered her things, moving through the motions mechanically. On the sidewalk, with travelers rushing past them toward their own journeys, Ethan set down the bag and turned to face her. "Text me when you land," he said. "And again when you see your mother. I want to know you're both okay." "You don't have to eat." "I want to. Let me do this one thing, Lena. You've done plenty for me this week. Let me return the favor." She nodded, overwhelmed by his steady presence in the middle of her chaos. "Thank you for the flight, the ride, everything. Go catch your plane. We'll talk when you're ready." Lena watched him drive away before heading into the terminal. The airport was surreal at this hour, half empty, fluorescent lit, populated by tired travelers and overnight workers. She moved through security in a daze, found her gate, and sat in an uncomfortable chair to wait. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Mrs. Chen's with Mia. All good here. Safe flight." Then, a moment later, "Your mother is going to be fine. Hold on to that." Lena stared at the message, drawing strength from his certainty, even though he had no way of guaranteeing it. But maybe that was the point. Maybe faith wasn't about certainty. Maybe it was about choosing to believe in positive outcomes until you had proof otherwise. The flight boarded at 11:15. Lena found her window seat and buckled in, feeling the exhaustion of the evening finally catching up with her. As the plane lifted into the darkness, she thought about Ethan driving back through Queens to his sleeping daughter, about her mother in a hospital bed in Portland, about how quickly normal life could fracture into crisis. She'd left Ethan's house thinking they'd just shared a simple dinner. Now she was hurtling across the country toward an uncertain future, and somehow his quiet support had become the thing anchoring her to steadiness. The irony wasn't lost on her. A week ago, she'd been trying to help him through his isolation. Now he was the one helping her through her emergency. Maybe that's what real friendship looked like. Not one person perpetually helping another, but a mutual exchange of support when it was needed most. Lena closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. Tonight she'd trust that her mother was stable, that Ethan would check in, that she'd find the strength to handle whatever came next. Sometimes trust was all you had, and sometimes, when you were lucky, it was enough. The plane descended through clouds toward Portland just after 2 in the morning. Rachel was waiting at baggage claim, looking exhausted and worried and achingly familiar. They hugged for a long time without speaking. "How is she?" Lena asked finally. "Sleeping? The surgery went better than expected. They want to keep her in ICU for observation, but the cardiologist is optimistic." Rachel grabbed Lena's suitcase. "Come on, I'll take you to the hospital. You can see her before they make you leave." The hospital was quiet at this hour, corridors dimmed and hushed. Rachel led Lena through a maze of elevators and hallways to the cardiac ICU, where their mother lay in a private room surrounded by beeping monitors and IV lines. She looked small in the hospital bed, diminished in a way that terrified Lena. But her color was good. Her breathing was steady. And when Lena took her hand, her mother's eyes fluttered open. "Lena? What are you doing here?" "Where else would I be?" Lena blinked back tears. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." Her mother's voice was weak, but her smile was pure stubbornness. "But apparently, I'm going to live to complain about it." They stayed for 20 minutes before a nurse firmly escorted them out, reminding them that ICU patients needed rest. In Rachel's car, driving through Portland's empty streets toward her sister's house, Lena finally let herself cry. Quiet tears of relief and residual fear. "She's going to be okay," Rachel said softly. "I know, I just seen her like that. I know." At Rachel's house, Lena collapsed into the guest bed without bothering to change clothes. Before sleep claimed her, she texted Ethan. "Made it to Portland. Saw my mom. She's stable and talking. Thank you for everything tonight." His response came immediately, despite the hour. "Best news I've heard all day. Get some rest. Your family needs you strong." Lena set her phone aside and let exhaustion pull her under. Tomorrow would bring hospital visits and difficult conversations with doctors and the beginning of whatever recovery journey her mother needed. But tonight, she'd done what she needed to do. She'd shown up, just like Ethan had shown up for her, just like she'd shown up for him. Maybe that's all any of them could do. Show up for each other when the world fractured, hold steady when everything else was chaos, and trust that presence mattered even when outcomes were uncertain. It wasn't much, but sometimes it was everything. Lena spent the next week in a blur of hospital corridors and medical terminology. Her mother progressed steadily, moved from ICU to a regular cardiac unit on day 3, started physical therapy on day 5, complained about hospital food on day 6, which Rachel declared a sure sign of recovery. The cardiologist was pleased with her progress, though he stressed the need for lifestyle changes and strict medication adherence. Through it all, Ethan checked in daily with brief texts that never demanded responses but always offered support. "How's your mom today? And remember to eat something, and once, simply, you're doing great." The messages were lifelines during the hardest moments. Sitting through a consultation about her mother's narrowed arteries, watching physical therapists help her walk 10 feet with a walker, fielding questions about long-term care options. On the 8th day, as Lena sat in the hospital cafeteria pushing a wilted salad around her plate, her phone rang. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," she answered, surprised. They'd been texting, but this was the first actual call. "Is this a bad time?" His voice carried a hesitance she wasn't used to hearing. "No, I'm just in the cafeteria pretending to eat lunch. What's up?" "I wanted to hear your voice, make sure you're actually okay, and not just saying you are in texts." Something in Lena's chest loosened. "I'm tired, worried, but managing. Mom's doing well, all things considered. They're talking about discharging her to Rachel's house in a few days." "That's good news. And you? When are you coming home?" "Home." The words settled over her with unexpected weight. When had New York become home in a way that felt distinct from simply where she lived? "I don't know yet. I need to make sure Mom's stable, help Rachel set up the house for recovery, talk to her doctors about the long-term plan." "Of course. Take all the time you need." A pause. "The office is asking about you. I told them you're dealing with a family emergency and I don't know when you'll be back." "Thank you. How's Mia?" "Missing you, actually. She keeps asking when you're coming to finish the Dragon movie." His tone shifted, carrying a smile she could hear. "Apparently watching it with just me isn't the same. You're a part of the experience now." Lena felt tears prick unexpectedly. "Tell her I miss her too, and that we'll definitely finish it when I get back." "I will." Another pause, longer this time. "Lena, I know you've got a lot on your plate, but don't forget to take care of yourself. You can't help your mother if you're running on empty." "You sound like Rachel." "Your sister sounds smart. Listen to her." After they hung up, Lena sat with her cooling coffee and thought about the past week. She'd been so focused on her mother's recovery that she hadn't processed her own emotional exhaustion. The late nights at the hospital, the constant low-level anxiety, the weight of seeing a parent suddenly vulnerable. It was taking a toll she'd been too busy to acknowledge. That evening, after her mother had been settled for the night, Lena and Rachel sat on Rachel's back porch with blankets and wine despite the cold. "You need to go back to New York," Rachel said without preamble. "Mom's not ready yet." "Mom's fine. She's got me, she's got her care team, and she's got another week minimum before discharge. You hovering isn't helping anyone, and you're going to burn out if you stay much longer." Lena opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Rachel was right. Their mother was stable and recovering well. The acute crisis had passed. What remained was the long work of rehabilitation and adjustment, work that didn't require Lena's constant presence. "I feel like I'm abandoning her if I leave now," Lena admitted. "You're not abandoning anyone. You're going back to your life so you can be available for the long haul. This isn't a sprint, Lena. It's a marathon. Mom's going to need support for months, maybe years. You can't sustain this level of intensity." "When did you get so wise?" "I've had 2 kids and a mortgage. Wisdom was mandatory." Rachel topped off their wine glasses. "Also, you keep checking your phone every 5 minutes. Who is he?" "What?" "The guy you're texting. Don't think I haven't noticed." Lena felt heat creep into her cheeks. "It's just Ethan, my friend from work." The one who drove you to the airport at 10 p.m. on a Friday? He was just being nice. Lena. Rachel fixed her with the particular look only older sisters could master. Nice is offering to drive. What he did was show up in a crisis without being asked. That's different. We're just friends. I didn't say you weren't, but friends can become more, and it's pretty obvious he cares about you. Lena thought about Ethan's daily texts, his phone call today, the way he'd handled her panic with such steady calm. He lost his wife 3 years ago. He's raising his daughter alone. I don't think he's looking for more. Maybe not. But people don't usually check in every single day unless someone matters to them. We matter to each other as friends, that's all. Rachel hummed skeptically, but let it drop. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the Portland sky fade from purple to black. Finally, Lena said, I'll book a flight for Sunday. That gives me 2 more days here, and I can come back in a few weeks when Mom's home from the hospital. Good. And Lena, call Ethan when you land. Don't just text. Why? Because he's clearly worried about you, and hearing your voice will mean more than an emoji. Sunday afternoon, Lena hugged her mother carefully in the hospital room, mindful of the healing incisions and attached monitors. You don't have to leave, her mother said, though her tone suggested she understood why Lena was going. I'll be back soon, and I'm a phone call away anytime you need me. I know, go live your life, sweetheart. I'm fine here with your sister bossing me around. Someone has to, Rachel said from the doorway. You're terrible at following doctor's orders. Lena left them bickering affectionately and caught an Uber to the airport. The flight back to New York felt different from the frantic red-eye that had brought her west. She was exhausted but calmer, worried but hopeful. Her mother would recover. Life would adjust to a new normal. The crisis had passed. As the plane descended toward JFK, Lena pulled out her phone and composed a text to Ethan. Landing in 20 minutes. Thank you for checking in all week. It meant more than you know. Then she deleted it and called him instead. He answered on the second ring. You're in the air. You're not supposed to be using your phone. We're descending. The flight attendants haven't yelled at me yet. She smiled, settling deeper into her seat. I wanted to let you know I'm almost home. How's your mom? Good. Really good, actually. She's being discharged to Rachel's in a few days, and the doctors are optimistic about her recovery. That's great news, Lena. I'm really glad. Me too. She paused, then added, Thank you for this week. For checking in, for listening, for just being there. You did the same for me. This is what friends do. Friends. The word sat comfortably between them now, no longer awkward or uncertain. They'd crossed some invisible threshold over the past 2 weeks, moved from wary acquaintances to people who showed up for each other when it mattered. I should go. We're about to land and I don't want to be that person still on their phone. Text me when you get home safe, Ethan said. And Lena? Welcome back. She smiled as she hung up, feeling something loosen in her chest. Home. She was going home. The next morning, Lena walked into Davidson and Partners at her usual time to find her desk covered in paperwork that had accumulated during her absence. She was sorting through contracts when Marcus appeared in her doorway. You're back. How's your mom? Recovering well, thanks for asking. Good, because Richard's been a nightmare without you here. Apparently nobody else can handle the Morrison account the way you do. Lena laughed despite herself. I've been gone 9 days. The office survived. Barely, Marcus lingered. Hey, a bunch of us are getting drinks after work on Friday. You should come. You know, if you're up for it after everything. It was an olive branch, Lena realized. The office's way of welcoming her back and acknowledging she'd been through something difficult. A month ago, she would have accepted immediately, would have organized the whole event herself probably. But now she found herself hesitating. Can I let you know? I'm still catching up on everything. Sure, no pressure, just thought it might be good to decompress with people. After he left, Lena sat with the invitation. The old version of herself would have gone, would have made everyone laugh and ensured everyone felt included, and come home energized by the social interaction. But the person who'd just spent 9 days in hospital waiting rooms felt differently about how she wanted to spend her energy. She was saved from further reflection by her phone buzzing with a text from Ethan. Coffee at 10? I have Mia's drawing for you. Lena smiled and typed back. Your office or mine? Cafeteria. Neutral territory. At 10 a.m., Lena found Ethan at their usual table by the windows, 2 coffees already waiting. He stood when she approached, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. Then, in a move that surprised them both, Ethan pulled her into a brief hug. "It's good to have you back," he said. Lena returned the embrace, struck by how natural it felt. When they separated and sat down, Ethan pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Mia made this for you. She was very insistent I deliver it in person." Lena unfolded the paper to find a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures watching what was clearly meant to be a dragon. The tallest figure wore a tie, obviously Ethan. The smallest had a ponytail, Mia, and the middle one had dark hair and a smile, Lena herself. Across the top in careful 7-year-old handwriting, "Our family watching dragons. Come back soon." "Oh," Lena breathed, unexpected emotion clogging her throat. "She considers you part of our movie nights now," Ethan said gently. "I hope that's okay." "It's more than okay." Lena traced the crayon figures with one finger. "Tell her I love it, and that I'll definitely come back to finish the movie." "You could tell her yourself, if you're free Friday night. No pressure, but the invitation stands." Lena thought about Marcus's drinks invitation, about the choice between performing social energy for the office versus the quiet comfort of Ethan and Mia's living room. It wasn't really a choice at all. "I'm free Friday. What time?" Relief crossed Ethan's face. 6, same as before. They sipped their coffee in comfortable silence, watching the office slowly wake up around them. After a while, Ethan said, "Things shifted while you were gone." "What do you mean?" "People kept asking me about you, where you were, when you'd be back, if you were okay. And I realized they were asking me because somewhere along the way, I became the person who knows these things about you." He met her eyes. "We're not hiding anymore. Whatever this friendship is, it's visible now." Lena considered his words. He was right. By going to Chicago for him, by him driving her to the airport, by their daily texts and coffee meetings, they'd made their connection public. The office knew they were friends. People would have opinions about it, would speculate and gossip and make assumptions. "Does that bother you?" she asked. "No." "Does it bother you?" "No." And she meant it. Let people talk. Let them wonder. She'd found something real in the midst of office politics and professional distance, and she wasn't interested in hiding it to make others comfortable. "Good." Ethan checked his watch. "I should get to a meeting, but Lena, I'm glad you're back. The office felt wrong without you here." After he left, Lena sat with his words and Mia's drawing. Something had shifted indeed. Not just in how others saw their friendship, but in how central it had become to both their lives. Ethan had become her person to call in crisis. She had become his backup when systems failed. They'd built something neither had been looking for, but both clearly needed. The week progressed with a return to normal rhythms, though normal felt different now. Lena tackled her accumulated work with renewed focus, but she also left at reasonable hours instead of staying until 8 or 9. She accepted lunch invitations from colleagues, but declined after-work drinks that would drain energy she wanted to save for other things. She was learning slowly to be more selective about where she invested herself. On Wednesday, she was reviewing contracts when her office phone rang. The receptionist sounded flustered. "Lena, there's a situation in conference room B. It's Ethan Blake and Richard Moss again, and it's getting heated. Can you—" "I'll be right there." Lena grabbed her notepad and headed down the hall, déjà vu washing over her. Through the glass walls, she could see Richard standing, face red, gesturing emphatically, while Ethan sat with his arms crossed, jaw tight. She knocked once and entered. "Gentlemen, I hope I'm not interrupting." "This is a private conversation," Richard said, and I'm making it a group conversation." Lena sat down next to Ethan, opening her notepad as if she'd been invited. "What's the issue?" Richard looked apoplectic. "The issue is that Ethan refuses to take on the Westfield account, which is a major opportunity for this firm." "The issue," Ethan interrupted, his voice dangerously calm, "is that the Westfield account would require me to travel to San Francisco every other week for the next 6 months. I've already explained that I can't maintain that schedule." "Other people make it work." "Other people don't have a 7-year-old daughter they're raising alone." Ethan's tone could have cut glass. I've given this firm excellent work for 3 years while maintaining clear boundaries about my availability. Those boundaries haven't changed. Then maybe you're not the right fit for where this firm is heading. The words hung in the air like a threat. Lena felt fury rise in her chest, hot and fierce. She turned to Richard with a smile that was all teeth. You're right, Richard. Maybe Ethan isn't the right fit. Because clearly this firm values billable hours over actual talent and face time over results. I'm sure the managing partners would be fascinated to hear that you're threatening to push out one of our top performers because he won't sacrifice his child for your ego. That's not what Oh, but it is. You're punishing Ethan for having the audacity to have a life outside this office. And you know what? I'm done watching it happen. She stood, gathering her notepad. Ethan, let's go. Richard, when you're ready to have a professional conversation about reasonable work expectations, we'll be available. Until then, this meeting is over. She walked out without waiting for a response, Ethan following after a moment of stunned silence. They made it to the stairwell before Ethan spoke. You just went to war with a senior partner for me. Damn right I did. He was being completely unreasonable. He's also the one who decides on promotions and bonuses. I don't care. And Lena realized she meant it. He was wrong, Ethan. You've given this firm everything you can reasonably give while being a good father. That should be enough. If it's not, then this place doesn't deserve you. Ethan leaned against the stairwell railing, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. No one's ever defended me like that before. Then people haven't been paying attention. You're worth defending. Lena. He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. Thank you. Not just for today, but for all of it. For seeing me when everyone else just looked past me. For showing up when I needed someone. For making me feel like I'm not completely alone in this. You're not alone. The words came out fierce, certain. Not anymore. They stood in the stairwell, the moment stretching between them charged with something Lena couldn't name. Then Ethan's phone buzzed, breaking the spell. He checked it and sighed. Mia's school. I need to take this. Go. I'll handle Richard if he tries anything else. After he left, Lena sat on the stairs for a long moment, her heart still racing from the confrontation. She just made a powerful enemy at the firm, had probably torpedoed any chance of her own advancement by calling out a senior partner so directly. The smart political move would have been to stay silent, to let Ethan fight his own battles. But she wouldn't, because somewhere in the past 3 weeks, Ethan had stopped being a colleague she barely knew and become someone she couldn't imagine not defending. Someone whose struggles felt personal because she'd seen behind the walls to the exhausted, dedicated father trying to do right by his daughter while navigating a career that demanded more than was fair to ask. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Mia's fine. Forgot her lunch. I'm running it to school. But seriously, thank you. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, she typed back. See you Friday. The rest of Wednesday passed without incident. Thursday morning brought an email from the managing partners requesting a meeting with Lena, Richard, and Ethan for Friday afternoon. Lena stared at the message, her stomach dropping. This was it, the fallout from her confrontation. She forwarded the email to Ethan with a message. We're probably both getting fired. Worth it, though. His response came immediately. Nobody's getting fired, but we should coordinate before the meeting. Lunch? They met at a small Thai restaurant 3 blocks from the office, claiming a corner booth for privacy. Over pad thai and curry, they strategized. Richard's going to spin this as me being difficult and you being unprofessional, Ethan predicted. Let him. I have documentation of every time he's made unreasonable demands. And I'm prepared to point out that his behavior toward you borders on discrimination against parents. Well, Lena, you can't. Watch me. I'm not letting him scapegoat you because you won't abandon your daughter. She met his eyes across the table. We're in this together. Whatever happens, we face it together. Ethan set down his fork, his expression serious. You keep showing up for me. Let me show up for you too. If this meeting goes badly, if there's fallout from your defending me, I'm not letting you take that hit alone. Deal. They shook hands across the table, sealing the agreement. Then Lena's phone rang, Rachel's number. Sorry, I need to take this, she answered quickly. Everything okay? Mom's being discharged tomorrow. Can you come back this weekend to help set up the house? Lena glanced at Ethan, thinking about their Friday meeting, about Mia's movie night invitation. I'll check flights and let you know. After she hung up, Ethan was watching her carefully. You need to go back to Portland. Not until after we deal with whatever Richard's planning. Lena, your mother, is stable and has Rachel. You need backup tomorrow more than Mom needs me this weekend. I appreciate that, but no buts. I'm not leaving you to face the managing partners alone. Something soft crossed Ethan's face. Has anyone ever told you you're impossibly stubborn? Regularly, it's one of my best qualities. They finished lunch and returned to the office, where Lena spent the afternoon building her case. She pulled every email Richard had sent demanding unreasonable hours. Every instance where he'd implied Ethan's parenting responsibilities made him less committed. Every moment where his expectations had crossed the line from demanding to discriminatory. That evening, Ethan called as Lena was organizing her documentation. Mia wants to know if you're still coming Friday, he said. I told her we might have to reschedule because of the meeting, but she's insisting you come for at least a little while after. Tell her wild horses couldn't keep me away. We're finishing that dragon movie if it's the last thing I do. She'll be thrilled. A pause. Lena, about tomorrow. Whatever happens, I want you to know this friendship has been the best unexpected thing to come out of the past 3 years, even if we both get fired. We're not getting fired, Lena said firmly. We're going to walk into that meeting, present our case professionally, and remind the managing partners that employee retention matters more than Richard's ego. And then we're going to watch Dragons with Mia. Ethan laughed, genuine and warm. When did you become so optimistic? When I realized I had something worth fighting for. After they hung up, Lena sat with those words. She did have something worth fighting for, not just Ethan's job or her own, but the friendship they'd built in the spaces between professional obligations. The quiet understanding, the mutual support, the sense of being seen and valued for who they actually were rather than the roles they played. She printed out her documentation, organized it into a neat folder, and went to bed early. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. But she'd walk into that conference room with her head high and her case solid, ready to defend someone who'd become far more important to her than any job could ever be. Because that's what friends did. They showed up, they stood firm, they faced the difficult moments together. And whatever came next, Lena knew she wouldn't face it alone. Friday morning arrived with cold clarity. Lena dressed carefully in her most professional suit, armor for the battle ahead. She arrived at the office early and found Ethan already at his desk, looking equally prepared and equally tense. Ready? She asked from his doorway. As I'll ever be. He straightened his tie. I reviewed your documentation last night. It's thorough. That's because Richard's been consistently unreasonable for months. We just have to make sure the managing partners see it. The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. The hours beforehand crawled by with excruciating slowness. Lena tried to focus on contract reviews, but found herself reading the same paragraph repeatedly without comprehension. At 1:30, she and Ethan met outside the main conference room where senior partner meetings were held. Whatever happens, Ethan said quietly, thank you for having my back. Always. They walked in together to find 3 managing partners already seated, Helen Ortega, James Chen, and David Kimura, along with Richard, who looked smugly confident. The empty chairs on the opposite side of the table felt like a defendant's box. Helen gestured for them to sit. Thank you both for coming. We've asked you here to discuss some concerns that have been raised about team dynamics and professional conduct. Richard leaned forward. I've documented a pattern of insubordination and refusal to meet firm expectations. Ethan has repeatedly declined major opportunities due to personal scheduling conflicts, and Lena has undermined my authority in front of clients and colleagues. That's an interesting interpretation, Lena said calmly. May I present an alternative perspective? Helen nodded. Please. Lena opened her folder and slid copies of her documentation across the table to each managing partner. What Richard calls insubordination, I call reasonable boundaries. Ethan has never refused work within his contracted hours. What he has refused is demands for constant travel and late-night availability that weren't part of his job description when he was hired. The demands of this firm evolve, Richard interjected. We need team members who can adapt. Adapt, yes. Sacrifice their children? No. Lena kept her voice level but firm. Ethan is a single father raising his daughter alone. He's given this firm 3 years of excellent work while maintaining clear professional boundaries. The fact that he leaves at 5 p.m. doesn't make him uncommitted. It makes him a responsible parent. James Chen had been flipping through the documentation with increasing interest. These emails from Richard are quite demanding. Ethan, you were given 48 hours notice for the Chicago trip? Yes, sir. That's when Lena offered to go in my place, which she handled excellently. And Richard, you threatened to reassign the Westfield account because Ethan couldn't commit to biweekly San Francisco trips? Helen's tone had cooled considerably. Richard shifted in his seat. I was trying to ensure the client received adequate attention. By punishing an employee for having parental responsibilities? David spoke for the first time, his voice sharp. That's exactly the kind of discrimination claim this firm cannot afford. I wasn't discriminating. You absolutely were. Helen cut him off, her expression severe. And Lena's intervention, which you characterized as unprofessional, actually prevented a significant HR issue. She was protecting both Ethan and this firm. Lena felt the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. The managing partners weren't buying Richard's version of events. Beside her, Ethan sat straighter, cautious hope crossing his face. James looked directly at Richard. Your management style has been a concern for some time. This isn't the first complaint we've received about unreasonable demands and poor treatment of staff, but it is the most thoroughly documented. He tapped Lena's folder. Effective immediately, you'll be working with HR to reassess your expectations and management approach. Richard's face went purple. You're siding with them over me? We're siding with fair employment practices and good business sense, Helen said firmly. Ethan is one of our top performers. Losing him because you can't respect reasonable boundaries would be a massive mistake. As for Lena, she turned to Lena with something that might have been approval. You showed initiative, protected a colleague, and prevented potential legal liability. That's exactly the kind of judgment we value in senior staff. The meeting continued for another 20 minutes, with the managing partners establishing new protocols for work assignments and travel requirements. By the time they were dismissed, Richard looked thoroughly chastened and Ethan looked dazed with relief. In the hallway outside, safely away from listening ears, Ethan turned to Lena. Did that actually just happen? We won. Lena couldn't quite believe it either. We actually won. You won. I just sat there while you demolished Richard's entire argument. We won together. Your documentation of his demands helped make the case. She checked her watch, 3:45. I should book a flight to Portland. My mom's being discharged tomorrow. Go, be with your family. Ethan hesitated, then added, but you're still coming tonight, right? Mia will be devastated if you cancel. Lena thought about the evening ahead, packing for Portland, early flight preparations, the exhaustion already pulling at her edges. Then she thought about Mia's drawing taped to her refrigerator, about the promise of finishing the Dragon movie, about the simple comfort of Ethan's living room. I'll be there at 6, she said. I'll just have to leave a bit early to pack. His smile was genuine and warm. Perfect. See you tonight. Lena spent the rest of the afternoon closing out urgent work and coordinating coverage for the week she'd be in Portland. Marcus stopped by her office around 5. I heard you took down Richard in a meeting, he said, admiration clear in his voice. The whole office is talking about it. I didn't take anyone down. I just presented facts. Facts that made him look like a tyrant. You're basically a hero right now. He grinned. So about those drinks, you sure you can't come? This would be the perfect time to celebrate. Lena glanced at the clock, 5:20. She could go to drinks, soak in the office admiration, cement her reputation as someone willing to stand up to senior partners. Or she could keep her promise to a 7-year-old and spend the evening with the people who'd become more important than office politics. I have plans tonight, she said, but thanks for the invitation. Hot date? Marcus waggled his eyebrows. Movie night with friends. Friends being Ethan and his daughter? At her surprised look, Marcus shrugged. Everyone knows you two are close now. It's actually kind of nice. He seems less miserable since you've been hanging around. After Marcus left, Lena sat with that observation. Ethan did seem less isolated, more present, but she'd changed too, she realized. 3 weeks ago, she would have gone to the office drinks without question. Now she was learning to be selective about where she invested her energy, choosing depth over breadth, meaning over performance. At 5:50, she packed her laptop and headed out. The subway to Queens was crowded with Friday evening commuters, everyone eager to start their weekends. Lena found herself smiling at nothing in particular, anticipation warm in her chest. She arrived at Ethan's house exactly at 6 to find Mia already watching for her through the front window. The door flew open before Lena could knock. "You came! Dad said you might be too tired, but I knew you'd come." Mia grabbed her hand and pulled her inside. "We're ordering pizza for real this time because Dad's too happy to cook." "I'm not too happy to cook," Ethan called from the kitchen. "I'm just choosing convenience." "You're smiling at the phone like a weirdo," Mia said. "That means you're too happy." Lena found Ethan at the counter with his laptop open, presumably ordering dinner. He was indeed smiling, an expression of such unguarded contentment that it transformed his usually serious face. "She's not wrong," Lena said. "You do look unusually happy." "I'm not getting fired and Richard's being forced into management training. It's been a good day." He closed the laptop. "Pizza will be here in 30 minutes. Mia, go set up the movie." "Already done," Mia shouted, running toward the living room. Alone in the kitchen, Ethan and Lena looked at each other. The events of the day hung between them. The meeting, the victory, the knowledge that they'd faced something difficult together and come through it stronger. "I keep thinking about what you said in that conference room," Ethan said quietly. "About me being worth defending. No one's ever—" He stopped, emotions clearly complicated. It meant everything. "You are worth defending. I hope you're starting to believe that." "I'm trying." He pulled 2 beers from the refrigerator, handing her one. "To standing up for each other." They clinked bottles just as Mia yelled from the living room that the movie was ready and could they please hurry up because she'd been waiting weeks to finish it. The evening unfolded with comfortable ease. They ate pizza on the couch while dragons fought Vikings on screen. Mia provided running commentary on the action sequences and character development with the seriousness of a film critic. When the movie ended, with the expected triumph of friendship over fear, Mia declared it even better the second time. "Because we watched it together," she explained. "Movies are better with friends." At 8:15, Ethan sent Mia to get ready for bed. She hugged Lena goodnight with fierce affection. "You're coming back, right? After you help your mom?" "Definitely. We have more movies to watch." "And you'll come to my winter concert? It's in 3 weeks and everyone's bringing people and I want you there." Lena glanced at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. "I'll be there. I promise." After Mia disappeared upstairs, Ethan walked Lena to the door. The house was quiet around them, the evening winding down into peaceful stillness. "She really loves you," Ethan said. "I haven't seen her this attached to someone outside family since Sarah died." "I love her too. She's an amazing kid." "She is." He leaned against the doorframe. "Lena, I know I keep saying thank you, but I need you to understand how much these past few weeks have changed things for me. For us. I stopped believing people could be trusted to stay, to show up, to actually see me. You proved me wrong. You showed up for me too. When my mom had her heart attack, you didn't hesitate. You just helped. Because that's what this is now, this friendship. We show up for each other." He smiled slightly. "Mia's right. Things are better together." Lena felt something shift in her chest, a recognition of how thoroughly these two people had woven themselves into her life. 4 weeks ago, Ethan had been a stranger. Now he was someone she couldn't imagine not defending, not calling, not spending Friday evenings with. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "Early flight tomorrow." "Text me when you land, and Lena?" He waited until she met his eyes. "Have a good week with your family. We'll be here when you get back." The promise settled over her like a blanket, steady, warm, certain. She would go to Portland, help her mother, support her sister. And then she'd come back to New York, to her job, to Friday movie nights, and coffee conversations, and the quiet friendship that had become essential. The week in Portland was healing in unexpected ways. Lena's mother came home to Rachel's house on Saturday, moving slowly but determinedly. Together, the 3 women established new routines, medication schedules, gentle exercise, modified diets. But they also laughed, told stories, sorted through old photo albums. "You seem different," her mother observed one afternoon as they sat on Rachel's couch folding laundry. "Different how?" "Calmer, more settled," her mother smiled. "Like you figured something out." Lena thought about Ethan and Mia, about the way her priorities had shifted. "I think I have. I've been so focused on being everything to everyone at work that I forgot what actually matters. Connection, showing up, being present." "Sounds like someone's influencing you," Rachel said from the kitchen, her tone knowing. "Maybe." Lena threw a sock at her sister. "But it's good influence." Throughout the week, Ethan sent daily updates. Mia's soccer team won their game. Work was manageable. They'd started a new puzzle and were saving a section for Lena to complete when she returned. The messages were casual, friendly, and absolutely essential to Lena's sense of equilibrium. On Wednesday evening, he called while Lena was helping her mother with physical therapy exercises. "Bad time?" he asked. "Never." Lena stepped onto Rachel's back porch for privacy. "What's up?" "Mia wanted me to ask if you'd be back for her concert. She's been practicing her song constantly and wants to make sure you'll be there to hear it." "Tell her absolutely. I land Thursday afternoon and the concert's Friday night, right?" "Right, 6 p.m. in the school auditorium." He paused. "I'm glad you're coming. It wouldn't feel right without you there." Something in his tone made Lena's heart skip. "I wouldn't miss it." After they hung up, Rachel appeared on the porch with raised eyebrows. "That was Ethan?" "He was just confirming details about Mia's concert." "Uh-huh. And the way your whole face lit up when he called?" "We're friends, Rachel. Good friends." "Lena." Her sister's voice was gentle. "I've known you your entire life. I've seen you with friends. This is different." "He lost his wife 3 years ago. He's still processing that grief. I'm not going to complicate his life by developing feelings beyond friendship." "Who says it would be a complication? Maybe it would be exactly what both of you need." Lena shook her head. "I'm not willing to risk what we have. This friendship matters too much." Rachel studied her for a long moment. "Okay, but for what it's worth, I think he feels the same way about you that you feel about him, and pretending otherwise doesn't protect anyone." The conversation stayed with Lena through the rest of the week. She examined her feelings honestly, acknowledging what she'd been carefully not naming. Yes, she cared about Ethan. Yes, she looked forward to their conversations with an intensity that went beyond normal friendship. Yes, the thought of Friday movie nights made her happier than it probably should. But Rachel was wrong about one thing. Ethan wasn't looking for romance. He was learning to exist again after loss, to open his life to friendship without the pressure of anything more. Lena's role was to be steady, present, trustworthy, not to complicate things with expectations he couldn't meet. Thursday afternoon, Lena said goodbye to her mother with promises to visit again soon and daily phone calls. The flight back to New York felt different than her previous returns. Less urgent, more peaceful. Her mother would be okay. Rachel had things under control, and Lena was heading back to a life that felt fuller than it had in years. She landed at JFK at 3 p.m. and went straight home to shower and unpack. At 5:30, her phone rang. "You're back?" Ethan sounded pleased. "Just got home an hour ago. How are things?" "Good. Great, actually. Mia's bouncing off the walls about tomorrow's concert. She's decided to wear her soccer jersey because it's her lucky outfit." Lena laughed. "That's very on brand for her." "Listen, I know you just got home and probably have a million things to catch up on, but I made dinner. Nothing fancy, just chicken and vegetables. If you wanted to come over..." He stopped, then added quickly, "No pressure. I just thought you might not feel like cooking after traveling." Lena looked around her empty apartment. She could order takeout, spend the evening unpacking and doing laundry, go to bed early. Or she could spend it with people who made her feel like she belonged. "I'll be there in 45 minutes, she said. When she arrived at the house, Mia met her at the door with a tackle hug that nearly knocked her over. "You're back. I missed you so much. Dad made your favorite vegetables, even though I think zucchini is disgusting." "Mia, let Lena breathe," Ethan said, appearing behind his daughter. But he was smiling, and when his eyes met Lena's over Mia's head, the warmth there was unmistakable. Dinner was comfortable chaos. Mia talked nonstop about the upcoming concert, her song, her costume, who was standing where. Ethan interjected with gentle corrections and reminders to actually eat food between sentences. Lena soaked it in, this domestic normalcy that had somehow become her chosen family.